In my last video, I showed that a mixture of 35% gold and 65% stocks provided the same overall return over the past 50 years as a 100% stock portfolio, but it did so with much less volatility and much greater predictability. The same was true for a 20% gold and 80% bond mix versus bonds by themselves. This stands in direct violation of guidance that we typically are given from financial professionals. And you have to imagine me using air quotes when I say financial professionals, because although I do not have their credentials and I am not qualified to give financial advice, I can see very clearly that their advice is just plain wrong. So in that last video, I mentioned that I don't strictly adopt the 35% gold, 65% equities portfolio, and that I would show everyone what I personally do and why. So here is that video. The first thing that I would like to mention and emphasize heavily is that personal finance is just that. It's personal. Everyone has different goals. Everyone lives through different circumstances. Therefore, it is natural to assume that there is no one-size-fits-all approach for everyone. This is why it's important to have a decision-making framework, and I'm going to walk you through mine. What you see here is a list of goals that I have for which I think only cash and cash equivalents are suitable. Why? Because some of them come due very near term. Others, even though they are not near term, require cash over very short periods of time. Let's start with the very short-term goals. At the top, I've listed all of my lumpy expenses, which come due within a year. I call them lumpy because they require substantial, large yearly payments instead of small monthly ones. And when they come up, I have to make sure that I have the cash. Take, for example, my school tax. My last school tax bill was a little over $5,000, and it came due in October. So I need to make sure that I have enough saved up to pay my school tax by the end of September. Otherwise, I may find someone will put a lien on my house. I also have a county tax due in mid-February. It cost me a little under $3,000 this year, so I need to have that saved up. I keep a separate bank account set up to cover all of these expenses. As I get paid, I divert $1,214 per month into this account and gradually fill up the buckets from the goal that is due in the nearest term future, and then, as I fill those buckets, the money spills over towards later spending needs. You'll notice that right now I'm working on saving up for Christmas. This may seem ridiculous to some, given that Christmas is more than 6 months away, but I find it much less stressful to have the money set aside in advance. That way I can focus on family rather than worrying about the money as the holidays roll around. Now, there are some intermediate term goals too, for which I think cash is the only appropriate choice. Replacing cars is something that everyone needs to do periodically. I started saving up for replacement cars as soon as we plopped down the checks on the dealer's desk for the cars that we currently drive. You'll notice I was able to fund the future car purchases early. That's because I'm an aggressive saver. I like having the cash available in advance of when it's needed. Kids' college is the same story. I started saving early and saving heavy. As I did so, the monthly cost associated with meeting the goal just in time decreased until there was nothing left for me to save. Now, I mentioned that I save in cash equivalents for college, even in the tax-sheltered 529 programs. The reason is that college tuition is spread over only 4 years. The tuition comes due when it is due, regardless of how investments are performing. I save in cash for college simply because I don't want to have to raid investment accounts that are earmarked for other purposes so that I can pay for college. Now, with all that said, let's discuss my retirement assets. Hopefully nobody will take me to task for not showing actual amounts here, only percentages. I'm doing this for the sake of privacy and also because there's no instructive value in showing absolute amounts. You can see right away that it appears that I am very heavy gold at a little over 46%, despite the fact that I told everyone in my last video that adopting much higher than a 35% position in gold means running the risk of being harmed substantially if gold performs poorly. Now, I have a heavy gold position, not because I'm a hypocrite, but because I believe pretty strongly in the case for gold. And I'll show you in a moment why I'm comfortable with the risk of having such a heavy gold position. I have a fixed income position that's a little bit more than 10%. Now, I don't really like fixed income. I have no choice in the matter in this case because I have a cash balance retirement plan at work that supplements my 401k. My company contributes about 4% of my baseline salary to this account, and each year it grows at the rate of the long-term treasury bond. Fortunately, it's better than the long-term bond because the value does not fluctuate with changing interest rates. I don't have access to this money until I quit or retire. When I do get access, I'll just slowly spend it down so that I can reduce drawdowns in my more volatile assets. Now, I do have a healthy equity position. I do fully take advantage of my 401k at work and my wife's 401k. We're taxed at about 35% between federal and state taxes, so not contributing to the 401k would mean that about 1/3 of the money that we earn and don't contribute just disappears from the get-go. In addition, I like getting the company match on that first 5% that I contribute. I do not hold fixed income in our 401k accounts. I feel I have enough exposure to dollar risk with my cash balance pension plan. This is especially true when I take into account the annuitized value of future promised Social Security payments. Those dwarf my equity balance by more than a factor of 2. And then there's silver. Yep, I have some silver. But given my age and the large price swings in silver, I keep this position fairly small. I don't feel at all at this point that I really need to swing for the fences. My savings rate has done the heavy lifting for me. Now, when looked at this way, things appear fairly unbalanced. I personally don't see my balance as being too far out of whack, and let me show you why. The way I like to see things is more in terms of chunks of my retirement portfolio that are earmarked for specific purposes. Remember that fixed income portion that I showed you on the last slide? Well, that position should be protected with a 20% gold position. When I do this, I wind up with a hybrid asset that can be considered a ballast. This is an account that I can gradually draw down so that I can reduce the drawdown of other more volatile assets. The equity portion I showed on my last slide should be protected by a 35% gold position. Doing so creates a hybrid asset that I consider to be for growth. Historically, the real growth has been about 5.5% from this type of mix, and it's been remarkably dependable. I have recently gotten to the point where the growth portion of my portfolio should generate about as much income as it costs me to live. And this is the reason why I'm comfortable speculating somewhat. When I subtract the gold needed for insurance purposes from the main pile and add the silver to it, it leaves me with what I consider to be my speculative position, which is a little bit over 20% of the total. I do have a strong conviction that the real valuation placed on gold is going to go much, much higher, and I'm playing the game accordingly, but I'm not 100% gold. So there you have it. As promised, this is my portfolio. I hope that going through it has been beneficial for you. The main messages that I want to leave with you are these. First, there is no one-size-fits-all solution that's good for everybody. Second, it's important to be aware of all of your goals, their timing, and how flexible the spending need is so that you can pick savings vehicles that are appropriate. For short-term goals of less than 5 years, and for longer-term goals that require quick drawdowns, I prefer cash. I don't mind low rates of return because I let a healthy savings rate do the heavy lifting. Third, the pure asset classes considered by the financial industry are probably not the best way to view the financial world. I prefer to divide things up into growth, which is stocks plus gold, ballast, which is fixed income plus gold, and then a speculative section which can consist of whatever you think is the most favorably valued at any point in time. It has taken me a long time and a lot of thinking to come up with this framework and this view of the financial world, but it has served me quite well. So I hope you found this informative. Feel free to ask questions. In my last video, I showed